Too?
No, sir will be joining from Mahmudul's system, I
Oh,
suppose.
okay.
We're doing the
Okay, we are going live in 5 seconds.
5 seconds. Sorry.
We can start.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Green Card with Gehi. Today we have on the panel myself, Suryia Rahman. I am an immigration attorney with Gehi and Associates. I've been with the company on and off for approximately 10 years now. We also have on the panel attorney Gregory Ippolito. He is an immigration attorney also. He has a lot of experience in representing clients in removal defense, along with affirmative asylum interviews with USCIS. And we will also have joining later Naresh Gehi to share with us his expertise and experience with asylum. That's today's topic. It's the what is required for asylum, our experiences with asylum. So we'll be talking about that today. Whoever viewers, you're welcome to ask questions, and we'd be happy to answer them for you, try our best to answer them for you. And of course, everyone, the viewers, you're welcome to contact our firm to schedule an individualized consultation with myself or Mr. Ippolito or Naresh Gehi. You can reach us at the numbers that are on our background. We have 3 offices. We have one in Jackson Heights. We have an office in Jamaica, Queens, and we have an office in Ozone Park, also in Queens, and the numbers are right there on the side. So we can go ahead and start talking about what is asylum. We can start there with the basics. Greg, you wanna tell us a little bit about what asylum is? What is asylum?
Sure. So asylum, the basic element of asylum is you fear returning to your country of origin. For some reason, you're not allowed, you cannot go back. And if you go back, you will be persecuted. So if you come to the United States through whatever means, and you fear going back, you can file an asylum claim. One of the main issues is that you need a basis for asylum and a nexus. Now, what this is that you have to be part of a protected group. And the reason for your persecution has to be because you're part of that group, whether it's based on race, religion, gender, sexuality. That's the basics.
Okay, yeah, that's about right. And of course, there's other elements to receiving that protection from the U.S. government. Now, you said it has to be connected to a specific nexus. That sounds like a very fancy word. What does that mean? What does nexus mean?
So that means the persecution that you suffered in the past, or that you fear suffering in the future if you were to return, has to be because of your membership in a group. If you're, say you're Christian, and your persecution is because you're Christian, right? If you were attacked because someone's just trying to rob you, there's a nexus. There has to be the persecution you suffered, whether it was physical, economical, or threats, has to be connected to your membership in that group.
Right. And when you say membership in a group, what exactly do you mean by that? There is that group that's written into the statute, specifically called particular social group. Is that how is that defined in your experience? How have you seen that being defined?
So that is defined as it has to be an identifiable or cognizable way of identifying you, okay? Some issues, some social groups that worked were women who were unable to leave their marriages in matter of Part G, right? The case law is matter of Part G. A social group that didn't work was informants for the police, matter of CA, okay? Whereas women unable to leave their marriages could not, there was no safe part of a country for them to go to because they were identifiable as married and they were unable to leave their abusive relationships. Whereas an informant could travel across the country and could not be easily identifiable as a member of woman in their group.
Right. So let's step back a little bit. We've talked very briefly about the substance, what is required for asylum claim. Let's step back a little bit and talk about the process. What is the process for asylum? So maybe our viewers already know there's two distinct processes for making an application for asylum. You have what's called an affirmative application, and you have a defensive application. So I'll talk a little bit about the affirmative process, as I was a former asylum officer with USCIS. So I am familiar with the process. That does not mean that if you were to hire us or retain me to help you with your case, that doesn't mean that it would give you any advantages to filing your claim other than being able to provide my experiences while I was with USCIS. So the process, affirmative process, is for those who are not in removal or deportation proceedings. It's typically for people who have come on a visa. They've come through a port of entry, on a plane, and they've come to the United States, and they either already know or they've realized that they can't go back to their home country because they're afraid they will suffer harm because of certain reasons. So the process there, with affirmative process, is that you file your application with USCIS. There's a form that's associated with that process. You file that form. Once you file the form, then USCIS will send you what's called a receipt notice to confirm that they received your application. Then you will have to go in and provide your fingerprints and your photo and other biometric information. After that, you get called in for an interview at the closest asylum office to your residence, and an asylum officer will interview you and ask you the reasons why you're afraid to go back. The asylum officer will then reach a decision whether they believe that you are entitled to the relief of asylum, or if they think that something's missing, an element which is required for the claim is missing, then they might do one of two things. If you're in status, they will deny your application. If you are out of status, they will refer your case to the immigration court. And once it's referred to the immigration court, you will have a second bite at the apple, and you'll be able to present your claim before an immigration judge. And so the person who applies for asylum, they can include their spouse and any children unmarried children under 21 as part of their applications, those family members that are in the United States. And sometimes the process takes many years, and to alleviate that process, USCIS, the law, allows the applicants to apply for their work permit after 100 to receive their work permit after 180, after their application has been pending for 180 days, so that they're not left in this country while they're waiting for their interview. They can, seek employment so that they can take care of themselves and not become a burden to the US government. So that is, in a nutshell, that's the affirmative process. So I mentioned earlier that if your claim is not accepted, it goes to the immigration court. So now I'll hand it over to Mr. Ippolito, who can tell us a little bit more about how the process works when you're in removal proceedings.
Yes. So when you're in removal proceedings, it's immigration court. So you'll either be, as Suryia discussed, you'll either be referred there from USCIS, or you'll be sent there right away if you cross unlawfully without a visa. You'll first have a master hearing, a preliminary hearing. You'll submit the form 589 with an affidavit and evidence. You'll later be given a trial date, and you'll have a hearing, and we'll discuss all your evidence. There'll be a prosecutor, a defense attorney, and a judge, and we'll discuss your case. Now, while it's technically a trial, in practice, it's more like an extended deposition, where your attorney will ask you a series of questions referred to as a direct examination. We'll start with a biography. We'll discuss your past persecution and your well-founded fear of future persecution. Then the prosecutor, otherwise known as an assistant chief counsel in immigration speak, will then do a cross-examination. Afterwards, the judge will usually get involved and question you on things that concern the judge and the court in general. From there, you're given a decision. Sometimes they give it to you right there. Sometimes they make you wait several months. But that's pretty much the process. Well in advance of a hearing or the trial, we submit all your evidence. We'll draft a brief. We'll and prepare you for this. So by the time the trial happens, everything's squared away, and you're ready to go.
And so, Mr. Ippolito, so when a person is in removal proceedings and they have a pending claim for asylum, are they still entitled to apply for or renew a work permit in that setting?
Yes, Suryia. The work permits, or EADs, as they call them, are granted for usually 1 to 2 years. And if you're in removal proceedings, you are allowed to reapply once yours expires.
Okay, yeah, and that's I would say that's a very critical benefit, which, is very, in our practice, we've seen our clients really need that worker authorization just because the process takes so long. In most cases, it takes so long.
So sometimes we have these cases, they're over in several months. Others, we've had some at our firm that last 10 years.
Yeah.
And depending on the complexity of the case, the issues involved, the courts being overwhelmed, it's hard to control. So you'll have your work permit for the whole entire time until the trial.
And so, I think I may have overheard some additional panelists. Is anyone else joining? No. Okay.
So we think. So Suryia, as an asylum officer, is there anything that you would, during an interview, that would kind of set you off and either say, oh, this person, they deserve a grant, or red flags that would cause you not to grant their asylum?
Yeah. So, of course, I don't speak for the government. I'm just speaking as to my experiences there. what it's very methodical. The interview is very methodical. It's non-confrontational. That's written into the practice manual for the asylum office, is that the officer cannot be confrontational with the applicant. So, it's a very, I would say almost friendly environment. The asylum officer is trying to work with the applicant to make sure all claims are explored, and that they're, thoroughly analyzed. So I would not say there's any red flags. Every applicant is given, their opportunity to present their claim. But what I find very critical, even today as a practicing, on the other side, representing applicants, is credibility. I find that's a very critical factor in somebody's claim. And what is credibility? Credibility is the ability to present a detailed and consistent testimony of what happened to you, or why it is that you're afraid to go back to your country. So that means being able to explain, if you were harmed, if you were hurt, if you're physically harmed, to be able to explain in detail what happened to you. Or if you claim to be a part of a specific group of people in your home country, as a member of the BNP in Bangladesh, if you identify as LGBTQ in Jamaica, being able to testify in detail how you fit into that category, or what happened to you. And this is difficult because in, I would say, 100% of the times, they're very traumatic experiences that our client or the applicant has gone through. So it's typical in these situations where the applicant, it's very difficult for them to recall details. It's difficult for them to explain what happened in a continuous timeline because of the trauma associated with what happened to them. So this is, where having an experienced attorney is, might be very beneficial to the applicant, because they will, guide you through the testimony and how to help yourself during that time, so that you can, testify credibly and with the detail that's required by the asylum office, or even before the immigration judge. Yeah.
I mean, credibility is usually, in court at least, it's one of the most crucial issues that judges look out for. If you say, when your case is with USCIS and you submit an affidavit and you leave out something of significance, and then you later bring it up in court, they'll say, well, why didn't you bring it up the first time? How do we know it's true? If this is significant, why didn't you bring it up the first time? And most of our clients, they've been through hell and back, and they send out this application and they miss things. And so that it is crucial to get an attorney, so we can make sure everything is done properly and you don't have problems later on.
Right. And also that, that brings up a good point too, which is that there's a requirement that you file your application within 1 year of your entry to the United States. So, a lot of times the trauma is still very fresh in our clients' minds when they're trying to file the application within 1 year, after having to travel through multiple countries. And if they're crossing the border, that process is traumatic in itself, of course. So there's a lot of reasons. Yeah,
we all need someone to lean on. You can lean on your attorney, okay?
Yeah.
have us guide you through it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially, we see a lot of applications that people do themselves. And then by the time they get to us, you know, like Suryia and I were discussing membership in a particular social group or basis for asylum. They'll say originally, they'll say, oh, this was religious, but it's really political. And then that has to be explained later. You know, why was this marked incorrectly? Why weren't these issues brought up? So we help you get the truth out. Okay.
Right. And Greg, you've recently had some wins before the immigration court. Do you want to talk about one of your recent wins that you've had?
Yes. So I could talk about, for me in immigration court, the best cases are the ones that are the most simple, that are clearly either religious, sexuality, or you know, political. I was part of this political party. The political party lost. They threatened my family. They attacked me. They have my number if I go back, right? One of the recent ones was incredibly difficult. I can't get, you know, due to confidentiality, I can't get into detail, but it was very difficult to connect his persecution, which he had a lot of evidence for. He had medical records, you know, corroborating evidence, but it wasn't clear that they persecuted him because he was in this political party. And you know, I will say, I can't say too much, but he originally filed our client originally filed the asylum application himself and didn't do a good job of explaining it, why he was attacked. But he did say he was attacked. He was threatened. He would be killed if he went back, but he couldn't really articulate that it was because of the basis in a political group. He worked for a company and they came to his business, and the way the government saw it was that this was an extortion racket and that it wasn't related to his politics. So by getting an attorney, we were able to clarify these issues to the court, save his credibility, and win the case. Did I give too much away, Suryia?
No.
We have to be careful when we
of course, all of our clients' information is confidential, definitely. So yeah, and that's, you know, you've won many cases recently. That's just one of them. But yes, we could talk for hours about all the cases that we've recently won. So
yes.
we do have we do have a question from a viewer. So I'm just waiting for the moderator to share it with us.
What kind of security checks do I have to undergo if I want to apply for asylum?
Yes.
Okay, so what you'll do is once you apply for asylum, you'll have what's called a biometrics request. And you'll go to immigration office and they'll fingerprint you, take your photograph and other, you know, your height, weight, and other information. And they do the background check on their own. If you've been living here for a while, they may ask you to get police clearances and you know, further evidence. If you do have a criminal record, it's another reason why we highly, you know, strongly recommend you get an attorney, because some crimes may disqualify you from asylum and some may not. So if you do have a criminal record and you would like to file for asylum, it's even more crucial that you get an attorney.
Right. What will prevent a person from getting asylum is if they are convicted of a particular serious crime, which could include an aggravated felony. That in itself doesn't mean that you should not even try to get protection from the U.S. government.
No, there are other options for you other than when you file for asylum, you file for asylum, you also file for what's called withholding of removal and also relief under the Convention Against Torture. Now,
Right.
no matter, and Suryia and I can discuss this, we've had cases where people would have really suffered, I mean, really strong asylum cases, but they did commit crimes. And we were able to win under relief under the Convention Against Torture.
Right.
Showing by a preponderance of evidence, that's 50% chance that if you return, you will be persecuted.
Right. And there's also cases where you know, some organizations such as the BNP in Bangladesh, they have been
Yes.
classified by the US Department of Homeland Security, along with the US Department of State, as a tier 3 terrorist organization. So that also in itself is not fatal to the claim, but there are legal arguments that must be made to clarify to the court that our clients' actions or membership should not fall under that bar to asylum.
Yes, it's, you know, it's very common, actually. Part of persecution, many countries, is that they will arrest you, you know, and charge you with a frivolous crime. So that needs to be explained to the court that no, they didn't really commit, you know, this is part of their persecution.
Right. Prosecution does not always, but sometimes it is persecution. Right?
Yes, invidious prosecution is a legal term. So we do have experience with, like you were speaking earlier about the BNP in Bangladesh.
Right.
They have been at certain times classified as a tier 3 terrorist organization. And we have, you know, many clients that are BNP members. And we're well adapted to discussing this, arguing in court, and going from there.
Yes. So we have some questions. How will the asylum officer make a decision about whether to grant asylum? So I think I went over this very briefly earlier. The asylum officer will go through all of the elements that are required for a grant, which is you have to prove that you are a member of the group that you claim to be a part of, whether it's a political organization or a race, a nationality. If you're part of a race of people that are a minority in your home country, you have to go through that claim. For example, if you're claiming that you are a Roma, you'll have to testify about what it is that makes a person Roma and why you identify as a Roma person. And then once you identify, testify about your membership to that group, you're going to testify about the officer will ask you questions about any harm that you've suffered in the past. Then they will ask you about any harms that you are afraid that you will suffer if you were to go back to your home country. And they'll go over any bars, such as a 1-year filing deadline bar, or if you've been convicted or arrested for any crimes, they will ask you about that. And then they will make the decision about whether to grant, deny, or refer your claim to immigration court. Typically, the asylum office will have you come back in 2 weeks to pick up the decision. Sometimes they mail the decision to the applicant through the mail. Okay. So how can my asylum status be terminated? Yes, it can. And that has happened. We have seen that happen in cases where after the grant of asylum, there's maybe facts revealed where maybe that applicant is associated with others who conducted questionable acts, even though that doesn't mean the applicant themselves presented any false claims or were untruthful, but maybe they were associated. Maybe that person helped them fill out the application or help them submit their application. Then the government might go back to all of the applications that were prepared by that person that's associated with the wrongdoing and try to terminate the status. In that case, the asylum office will give you the opportunity to come back and do an interview to explain why your status should not be terminated. And if it was granted by the asylum, by the immigration court, you will have an opportunity to go back to the immigration judge to explain why your status should not be terminated. Okay.
Another reason is, unfortunately, if you go back to your country of origin after you're granted, that would, when you're filing asylum, when you're claiming you're an asylee, you're saying, I cannot go back because I will be persecuted. If you go back, you could possibly prove it's safe for you to return, and they could terminate your status.
Right, yes. And a lot of times this comes up also down the road when maybe they were granted their asylum. They even received their green card. So 1 year after you're granted asylum, you can apply for your legal permanent resident status, your green card. So maybe they even got their green card, and now they're at the US citizenship stage, which is 5 years after the grant of asylum. And the officer, I apologize for any noise in the background. And the officer might be going through your file and maybe pick up on some inconsistencies between your original asylum application and then your green card application and now your citizenship application. So that might raise some flags to the officer, and which might end you in removal proceedings where you have to defend yourself there.
Yes. Also, there are some exceptions to this, such as changed circumstances. Say you were you're persecuted for your political opinion, and you were granted asylum, and then that political party was thrown out of government, and the leaders arrested. Well, it's now safe for you to return if they're no longer in power. But you may have to argue this. It's still an issue. We see changed circumstances in a lot of our cases, especially because the process takes so long. So it's a double-edged sword. Sometimes you'll have a very strong asylum case, and then the political party or the religious militia or whoever you feared are eradicated and out of power. The court will then say, now it's safe for you to go back. Now there's a couple decisions that can be used to help you, and the court can, at their discretion, still grant you asylum if you prove that you did suffer past persecution. But there's also, we have a couple cases where there's changed circumstances in future persecution. We have a current case, can't talk about it too much, but respondent said something in public, came to the United States, and while he was here, the law changed and made what he said illegal. What he said was now illegal, and they had a warrant out for his arrest. So this is clearly a political opinion that he said in public. It was legal while he was there. While he came to the United States, the law changed, and they will arrest him if he returns. It's a changed circumstance.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just grabbing a random example here. The US government can also change their the way that they view certain groups. So, at one point, it could be, you know, for example, if you helped
The Mujahideen.
that's exactly the case I was thinking about. Yes, if in the
Yes,
80s you helped Afghanistan fight against the USSR, and maybe you were granted asylum on that basis. But now the US government might have a different opinion on those people who fought against the USSR. So there,
Yes, that's a very interesting case we had.
yeah. So there's many nuances that could, you know, that we could discuss with asylum claims here.
Yes.
So we're ready for more questions. Yeah, Greg.
Okay. Be video questions? How does this?
Oh, yes. We're ready for any video questions.
I see a Mr. K.
Yes.
Hello.
Hello, Mr. K.
Hi.
Hi.
Myself, Mr. K. I have one question. What will be the benefits of receiving asylum?
Okay, so Greg, you want to?
The benefits of receiving asylum?
What will be the benefits of receiving asylum?
So receiving asylum, once you receive asylum, you're granted what's called asylee status, which gives you access to government benefits. And a year after you're granted asylum, you can then apply for legal permanent residency. The biggest benefit is you can stay in the United States legally and eventually get your citizenship. You can continue to work here. Also, another huge benefit is that once you're granted asylee status, and even before you are granted legal permanent residency, you're allowed to bring in to the United States your some immediate family members, such as your wife or children. Does
Right.
that
Your spouse
Yeah.
or your children? Yes.
spouse or younger children? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your question.
Yes. So we're more than I love these video questions, but please keep in mind this is not considered privileged because it's broadcast. So I would please feel free to ask whatever you want, but I would not share too many confidential details that you wouldn't like being brought up later. Okay, see Mr. Ash.
Yes, hello. Hi,
Hi.
Greg. Hi, ma'am. Yes,
Hi.
I have a question. I received asylum. So can I apply for a green card or a citizenship?
You were issued asylum? You won your case?
Yes, I received the asylum. So can I apply
Okay,
for a
well,
green card?
well, first of all, congratulations. Okay, we're happy to have you here. Okay, you're like I said, right now you have what's called asylee status. So do you have family members? Is your wife with you here?
Nobody is here actually. I'm just first
Nope.
coming.
Are you married? Do you have a wife in
Yes.
the country of origin? Well, right now you can petition to have her come here, okay, and be with you. And you can apply for legal permanent residency, a green card, in 1 year after the date of your grant. And then 5 years from then, you can apply to be a citizen.
Oh, that's great.
Okay.
Okay. Yes, yes. Thank you, Gregory.
Thank you,
so
Mr.
much.
Ash.
Thank you for your question.
Okay.
Thank you.
And congratulations.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other ones?
I think if we don't have any more questions, we can start wrapping up the webinar.
Sure.
me just check in. Okay, we do have a few more questions. Okay. Do I need to bring in an interpreter to the asylum office and to immigration court? So, office at the asylum office is that you have your own interpreter interpreting for you, and there will also be a monitor, a telephonic monitor during the interview, to just ensuring that your interpreter is interpreting correctly, and of course is not providing you with any legal advice you know, in the process of the case, and make sure, you know, they're not adding to or taking away from what it is that you're testifying to during the interview. Greg, you can talk about what happened in immigration court.
In what?
In immigration court with the interpreter. Does
Okay,
the applicant?
So the court, it's the attorney's job to inform the court that an interpreter will be needed. Now, we have many clients that have been here for a long time and speak English very well. Unless you're a native born speaker, I strongly recommend getting an interpreter. Even if you speak English fluently, I suggest getting an interpreter because it slows everything down. When you're in court, you're sitting there on the stand, and I'm going to be yelling at you, the prosecutor is going to be yelling at you, and the judge is going to be yelling at you. And it's very disconcerting and difficult, okay? So an interpreter allows you to listen to what is being said in English, assuming you know some English. Then they translate it to you, and then you speak, right? It slows everything down. Generally, I have a lot of clients that they don't want interpreters because they say, I speak English so well. Please keep an interpreter. It helps so much articulating what your case, what you mean, and what you're trying to say. And then for me as an attorney, the best part is it just slows everything down. So you have more time to think, more time to act, and go from there. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And in those kind of situations where, you know, you're before a government official, most people get a little nervous, and
Yes.
they tend to start kind of, you know, just spilling everything without thinking. And like you mentioned, Greg, it really helps slow down the process so that our clients, so that the applicant can think about their answer, think about the question being asked before they answer.
Yes, and their answer will be, you know, articulated and stated correctly and accurately.
Right. And you know, it's where a lot of legal terms come up, which, you know, even if you are, you know, speak English well, maybe in this setting, you know, where, you know, bigger words might be used, it might, you know, the interpreter will definitely be helpful.
Yeah, you don't want to make a mistake. You don't want to, if you can, we had a recent case actually where there was our clients got their statements translated by not by a professional. We'll just leave it at that. And it didn't articulate their political reasoning, their fear of political persecution. It didn't state it correctly. They just left it out. And this came up during trial. Why didn't you say this? Or you're saying this now, but originally you said something else. And we had to work very quickly to properly translate these original documents and prove to the court that their testimony remained consistent throughout their case.
Yes. So we have another question. What if I did not apply for asylum within 1 year of arriving in the United States? It's not fatal. It's definitely makes it harder to get asylum if you apply after 1 year, but it's not impossible because there are exceptions to the 1 year filing deadline. And those exceptions are if there are extraordinary circumstances or changed circumstances. So what are those two things? Extraordinary circumstances means that there might be a legal reason you did not apply. For example, if you're underage, if you were in the country, if you came to the country when you were very young, and when you became older, maybe you're a member of the LGBTQ community, maybe you transitioned, and then you apply for asylum when you're 19, 20, 21. So obviously you're filing your asylum application long after 1 year after you've arrived in the United States. So in that case, you do have a legal reason why you didn't apply, because you were underage. And you might also fit into a changed circumstance. Before you weren't maybe openly LGBTQ part of the community, or maybe you had not transitioned, maybe you had not received a specific surgery. So there are exceptions to that rule. Greg, do you want to talk about any exceptions that you've seen in your experience?
Yes, there's two that come to my mind. One is unfortunately very common. And it's called the Lozada claim for ineffective counsel. And many times immigrants come here and they, if you're anyone who's been in the country, it takes a little while to figure out, what's going on. You don't know the language, and they'll go to unscrupulous attorneys or notarios, and they won't properly file their claim. So, what we have to argue is that their previous counsel did not effectively file their claim within time, and that they had intended for it to be filed within 1 year. But for the malpractice, if you will, or the negligence of the prior counsel to file this within 1 year, it would have been filed. So that's something that we see, unfortunately, and we have to deal with. Another one, which our firm had to fight for, and it's lesser known, is interfamily issues such as divorce. We had a case where a woman was told by her husband that he had filed the asylum, and he did not. And they left, they got a divorce, and she then realized her case was not filed within 1 year. And that was something that we had to fight for, and we eventually, it succeeded. That issue, the case succeeded.
Yeah, so it is problematic, and it does make the case more difficult, but it is not fatal. We have had clients who filed after 1 year and they were granted asylum. So I would suggest those people in those circumstances, speak to an experienced attorney right away to see if they can still file their claim.
So I see another question I find is more common than most people think, and that is, can I cancel my asylum case? And the answer is yes, you can always withdraw your asylum case. There are consequences, depends on the case. Because these cases take so long, people find spouses, they fall in love, they get married, and they're able to adjust their status through their US citizen spouse. It doesn't mean your case was frivolous or it wasn't strong. It's just always a risk going to court. And I recommend to all my clients that if there's a safer way for you to, the end goal is the green card. And if there's a safer way, we will help you withdraw the claim and adjust your status through other means.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's something we see very commonly as well. yeah, these cases, like we mentioned earlier, can take up to 10 years. And, our clients meet people, they get married. Sometimes their kids turn 21.
Yes.
And,
Yeah.
if you have a child able to file for you, a US citizen child that's able to file for you, and you're inspected, like Greg said, the end goal is to live safely in the United States. And if you can
Yes.
get that through, through a family-based petition, which is relatively easier because there's less things you have to prove to the US government to get your green card that way, we definitely encourage that.
I mean, we have several cases. They are extremely strong asylum cases. I would extremely strong, but there's an easier way. So it doesn't mean your case isn't strong or it was frivolous. It just means that things change in your life, and go from there.
Exactly. You have to work smart.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I think that's it. I think we've addressed all our questions. So again, feel free to reach out to myself, Suryia Rahman, or attorney Gregory Ippolito. We're both experienced attorneys in asylum and other immigration matters. We have 3 offices. They're listed on, the panel on the side. We have our Jackson Heights, New York office, Jamaica, Queens, and Ozone Park, also in Queens. The numbers are on the side. Ozone Park is 718-577-0711. Jamaica 718-764-6911, and Jackson Heights is 718-263-5999. You can also email us directly if you prefer. Greg's email is Gregory, Gregory, @gehilaw.com. GEHILAW.com. Mine is Suryia @gehilaw.com. That's SURYIA @gehilaw.com. Please feel free to reach out to us with your questions, and we will try to help you the best we can. Okay. Thanks all for joining. And thank you, Greg, for joining the panel.
Thank you, Suryia, for having me.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.